What do you think about Apple's announcement with CarPlay? Obviously, we know that Apple has been talking to automakers for a while, but now we sort of see the fruits of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a step. It's essentially taking the technology you have in your phone and making it easier to display, is exactly what John had said. So for what we think about it is this, is Apple realizes that the car is the next area of innovation, and they're trying to make it easier to use your products and really lock you in. So it's less about making money from CarPlay on each individual. It's more about kind of taking some of the friction out of using your phone in your car, which presumably would make you more interested in holding on to your iPhone longer or getting other iPhones or iPads or other devices.
And Apple is approaching this differently than some other technology companies like Microsoft and BlackBerry. I mean, their technology isn't really going to be embedded into the car. It's more of a sort of plug-in, right?
Exactly. So there'll be some basic hardware that all the CarPlay will have. For example, a button on the steering wheel that will allow you to activate Siri. So there are some things that are kind of standardized on that. But as far as the actual screen, it's still to be determined what we'll actually see on that. Normally, if you don't have an iPhone, for example, on that screen in your car, you probably have other mapping tools and things like that. And so you don't actually need to have an iPhone to optimize some of the entertainment features of the car, but obviously it would take some of that friction out, which is what they're trying to accomplish.
Now, John, what is your take on the brands that Apple is working with to start here? Obviously, Eddie Q, Apple executive, has a relationship with Ferrari, but otherwise we're seeing a lot more high-end manufacturers.
I think this is pretty common. You know, the higher-end auto manufacturers like to be in a position to offer you lots of bells and whistles, and they love exclusivity. And that's, as one of the first partners in this program, puts you in a nice position to be able to say that to any of your luxury car shoppers. Obviously, though, down the road, and we've already heard from other car manufacturers said, oh, hold on, we'll be part of this program at some point. If Apple truly wants to make this about being connected everywhere for anyone who's part of this world of Apple devices, they're going to have to open the doors to other players, and they very much plan on doing that.
Now, the life cycle of a car is a lot longer than the life cycle of an iPhone. Gene, is Apple committing to doing things a certain way for, say, 10 years? I mean, that's how long you might have your car, if not longer.
Well, they'll probably keep changing it, and then they'll try to, you know, the car manufacturers will want you to buy a new car, and then, but from Apple's perspective, like you said, is you hold on, the average life expectancy of a car in the U.S., at least an individual owner of it, is about just under 7 years. And so during that period, you typically, with Apple products, you'll typically spend about $5,000 on different types of Apple products. So I think they're more interested in locking you in for those 7 years, and I'm sure, the automotive company will want you to probably increase how fast you buy the car if Apple's able to add some better bells and whistles more quickly.
How big an opportunity is this for Apple in terms of revenue, Gene?
Well, you know, again, it just kind of fortifies that you know, we've always talked about the halo effect. This is kind of another thing, another angle to that halo effect. And so the opportunity really is in keeping their existing base happy. And I think it's more about that than it's about having you know, a specific upside to revenue. I think it's keeping their base in and keeping Android out in a lot of ways, because obviously Apple has really huge market share in the U.S. today.
All right, Gene, now we're seeing reports that Apple is hiring a significant hundreds of new engineers and supply chain managers in Asia. What do you know about this? You know, what does this mean about some of the stuff that they're working on?
Well, there's clearly new stuff coming, and the company on Friday talked about that at their shareholders' day, that, you know, this is new product category year 2014, so we know there's new stuff coming. I attribute most of these rumblings about hirings as more of just kind of standard operating procedure. I mean, keep in mind that if you look at the total number of devices that Apple's manufacturing, 250, 300 million devices a year, these are huge numbers. So the fact that they're hiring a lot of people in Asia for the supply chain, they better be, because they're continuing to grow their business. So I think that that's somewhat of a bullish sign that they feel comfortable that they're even growing. I think some investors don't believe Apple's growing at all, and so maybe at the base level, that is a positive sign.
Now, you've also heard some big numbers about small screens that they're producing, like that might be small enough for a watch. Tell us what you've been hearing.
So there's been some reports. Now, you got to take things with a little bit of grain of salt, but I think this is a good example of some big numbers out there that you need to take with a grain of salt. But more recently, there's been reports out of Asia that between 40 and 60 million, Apple's billing between 40 and 60 million are orders for these small screens for the watch, which is more probably like a Fitbit than a watch. But the reality is that's the most likely product category in 2014, the new product category, so that's probably coming. But I think some of those numbers, the reality is there is some jockeying going around for supply of these screens, but probably the numbers that you hear out, you need to take them with a little bit of grain of salt. We think the real numbers are probably closer to 10 million versus these 40 to 60 million whispers that get put out there.
And what about a larger iPhone? Is that coming? Is that coming this year?
Yeah, it's got to be. The company has said that they believe that there is value in a bigger screen phone. Obviously, their cycle would suggest that it's going to be in August or September. So I think if you're interested in buying an iPhone, it probably makes sense and you want that bigger screen to hold off until the fall.
All right, John, you want one of those? Bigger iPhone? Apple Fitbit?
Take more selfies. You can fit more people
Yes.
into the picture if you know.